Hello, how are you? Gosh, I don't know whether I can remember all the people we have coming up. That was a list that went on, and remember next week and the week after that, and in a month's time.
Well, people get excited.
I
I've been
know.
talking
Well,
about you coming on, and
well,
people are all kinds
that's
of
great.
excited about that.
I'm thrilled to be here. Uh, I listen to public radio all the time, so it's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, you know what? Actually, I'm going to we'll get into your book, but it's serendipitous to have you here today because it is the 75th anniversary to the day of CBC, and your first television role, 1954. I hope you remember this because you're looking at me like you don't.
No.
CBC's The Canadian Howdy Doody Show.
Really?
You were playing Ranger Bob. Do you remember this at all?
No, not at all. But I remember working at the CBC Radio in Montreal. I put myself through college on CBC Radio.
You worked at CBC Radio.
Radio, French radio, Montreal Radio. Rupert Kaplan was the producer then, legendary producer at that time. A truckload of Canadian actors from Montreal. At that time, and I don't know how it is now, but the centers were really Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver, mostly Toronto. But because it was the CBC and they wanted to keep alive Canadian actors, they had little pockets of employment for us, and so Chris Plummer and Bob Goodyear and legendary actors whose names I would need to be in front of me were doing Sunday morning broadcast of a church thing or a Bible show, and we talked like this, Yeah, because even though now we do interviews like this, then this was the Bible show. And if you could do the Bible show, you had to talk.
Did you do the Bible show?
Absolutely. I got whatever it was, $25, $85 every time you did. So Rupert Kaplan was our lifeline.
But you also
Rupert,
did. You were in,
Bill.
You were in several other CBC productions, notably Space Command. This is CBC's very first dramatic series, which also, by the way, featured James Doohan, who would go on to be Scotty.
Right.
So you were all over CBC, and this is in the early 50s.
I was all over CBC in Montreal, trying vainly to act and be a professional actor. And then when I left Montreal and came to Toronto to work, I was all over the CBC. I wrote plays. They bought my first screenplay. It was a half-hour television drama. Met my wife on a television drama that I wrote for the CBC years and years ago.
Did you cast her?
I did. She was beautiful and interesting. And
the old casting director gets the girl.
I didn't know the legend, but of casting couches. But no, as a matter of fact, there was no casting couch involved. It was just I saw this extraordinary looking actress and thought she'd be perfect for the role, and then I met her and subsequently married her.
This book, you've authored nearly 30 books throughout your career. You now give us Shatner Rules, your guide to understanding the Shatnerverse and the world at large. You know, one of the things that struck me about this book is it's a remarkably positive offering. And one of the things, in fact, you say is that you always say yes. Yes is a word that you're more comfortable with than no. Why did you want to write about that right now?
I'm not sure always. Obviously, you need some discretion. You're not going to jump off a building, say yes to the thrill of falling rapidly at whatever it is, 102 miles per hour. No, you'd say, no, I'm not going to jump off the building. But yes to opportunity, yes to a new idea, yes to a new individual in your life, a friend. Yes, say yes. Stop saying no, we're going to do the way we've always done this. And say yes to something in your life that could lead to other things, and you just follow the adventure and follow the journey.
That seems like a particularly affirmative kind of way of seeing opportunities. Do you consider yourself a positive person?
I do, and it is positive, and I don't think it matters what age you are. The idea that by going out into the world, by embracing the world, you're better off than not, than by shutting the door and trying not to be vulnerable. We're all vulnerable to the vicissitudes, but you've got to keep going. Otherwise, you dry up, and you're going to die in the same length of time. You've got an allotted span, whatever that may be, and you hurry across the road, even if you're feeling trepidatious.
You talk about something like even the role of Denny Crane, where it first came to you. It was on The Practice, and then you turned it into a role on Boston Public, an Emmy Award-winning role, and a very popular one. But something like that, you might have had some trepidation about, but you said yes, and it opens up the door to what it can become.
Right. Even there, I had done several series, and a series is really tough on a relationship. And so several relationships came and went as a result of working hard. I make the point in the book also that dedication is necessary, and by dedicating yourself to something, you're going to sacrifice something else. There's no way. There's only 24 hours. Actually, when you think of the 8 hours you need to sleep and the time, your day is very limited, and you only have a certain number of hours. And what are you going to do with those hours? If you dedicate yourself to the pleasantries, that's fine too. 9 to 5 and home and hearth, good. But you're going to sacrifice the dedication that an obsessive person might have. Fine, but be aware that you only have a limited amount of time, and choose your priorities and go with them.
The dedication of an obsessive person. Are you an obsessive person?
I probably am. I'm probably.
Probably?
Well, it's hard to say whether the word obsessive has a negative sound to it, or are you just dedicated, or do you just feel strongly about. As an observer might say, well, you're obviously obsessed by. I mean, I love horses, for example. I ride competitively with horses. Right. Am I obsessed by horses? Probably, but
passionate. Yeah.
Passionate. So where does passion begin and end, and where does obsession begin and end?
When you say working hard, in the introduction to this book, Shatner Rules, you write, "Life is hard. Get as much free cake as you possibly can." Now, now I want to deconstruct this. Well, see, looking at your career. First of all, I mean, I remember the first big interview we did was about your memoir, and I know there were some tough days when you were a kid in Montreal, and I know that in the early '70s, post Star Trek, there was some tough times. But basically, if someone looks at your life, your very successful career, they might not think William Shatner's life is hard. Do you think of your life as hard?
No, I don't think anybody gets a free ride. It looks to be easy. Somebody's always worried and wondering, and I used that word already. Is afraid of what's around the corner. I've paid my dues, but hard is lack of water, dust and dirt and sand, and living in a tent, and unable to afford health care, and that's hard. Working in a coal mine and breathing the coal dust and being frozen somewhere, that's hard. Struggling through life is hard, but everybody's got that struggle.
So then why does this resonate for you? Life is hard, get as much free cake as you possibly can.
Well, it resonates as a story that my mother would, on her 84th birthday, would say to every restaurant she went to that we took her to, she said, "This is my birthday." And the waiters would gather around and bring her a free piece of cake. Right. And I was so resentful. Wow, you can't do that, man. You're embarrassing me. And so I tell that story. Only latter day do I realize, hey, my mother had something there. She got a free piece of cake, and she deserved it. She was 84. We all deserve it. If somebody's going to offer you a free piece of cake, go get your free piece of cake.
What's your free cake these days?
What's my free cake?
Yeah.
Well, my free cake is living this extraordinary life, working hard, loving hard, family hard, and yet I'm in great health and vigor. And that's my free cake.
You do look really great, by the way. I know you get told that, but you look amazing.
Well, but thank you. I'm not doing anything special. I take my supplements, and I try to exercise as much as possible. And I ride my horses as hard as possible. What I find myself doing almost, I don't know where it comes from, inadvertently or part of a grand plan that was put into place during my life, and I'm reaping the benefits. But my mind is where I hear that you're supposed to lose faculties as you get older. That isn't necessarily true. I think you can develop brain cells if you exercise your brain. They talk about doing crossword puzzles and exercising the brain as if it were a muscle, and it improves. I'm telling you that I don't know about the crossword puzzle, but I've had to memorize tens of pages at a time and spot those lines and remember people's names and tell the same stories and remember where I am and what I'm doing.
Well, you see your old friend Christopher Plummer doing Barrymore on stage.
I mean, there's Chris doing
for
the
2
same
hours,
thing.
and you sort of go, this guy hasn't lost any of his.
Exactly. On the contrary, he's improved. Everything about Chris is better. He's like fine wine, and there are people who do that, and then you look around and you see the individuals with the spots on their lapels and the mustache that has food hanging from, and you say, well, that's what old age is. That isn't necessarily true.
You write in this book as two different people. You say there's Bill, and then there's Shatner. Can you explain the difference? This is Bill. You're Bill right now.
We all hold, although you in this subdued studio, surrounded by the things you love, looking into the microphone, you're alone in the studio, and you're not. You're surrounded by people you know, and this microphone ultimately becomes your friend, and it's almost your confidant. And you're talking. You've got a windscreen in front of your mic.
Yes, I do.
That's all that interferes between you and the intimacy of talking to somebody's ear.
Yes.
You're right in there talking to somebody's ear, and so you're here. This is you. This is actually you talking.
Right.
This is not a shield, a mask that you hold up, that everybody holds. But you change when you leave the studio and you order a cup of coffee. Well, you're now, I'll have mine straight, please. And you're somebody else.
No, I'm the same guy.
No, you do not talk to the the coffee shop owner like this.
Well,
you don't say,
like
next week
here.
I'll be. No, but this is you. I'll bet you when you talk to your girl or your guy or your parents or whatever.
Thank you for
come out as you've been talking about arguing. You're going to come out as to whether you're straight or not. You'll talk to them like this because this is you.
Right. That's also me. So, but I'm losing your point. Your point.
My
the
point
Bill
is
and the Shatner.
For me, I am myself here. I'm arguing.
Yes.
I'm just discoursing with you.
Yes.
And on the other hand, there is this guy Shatner who's going on stage at Massey Hall on Thursday night, who is a performer and getting laughs and making you cry and edifying you in a.
But the guy is William Shatner.
Yeah,
that's your name.
And my record, Seeking Major Tom.
Yes.
Is another aspect of William Shatner. So there are all these facets of Shatner, one of which is Bill, and that's the person I am who with people I know and love.
All right. Okay. But it's just that the acting doesn't begin and end on stage or on screen for you. So, I mean, when you're at Massey Hall tomorrow night or whenever.
Yeah, Massey Hall tomorrow
night.
And on
and then
Place des
Montreal,
Arts in Montreal.
Then so
the next night.
So is that the? I'm getting confused myself. Is that the real William Shatner, or is that the acting William Shatner?
There's something in between there, because part of reaching an audience is being yourself, but you have to be. If you're on stage, you don't have this microphone, which you can whisper into and make love to.
For my girl or guy.
There's a theatricality about a stage performance which has to tread between being yourself and genuine and reaching out to the audience, being part of the audience, reaching and embracing the audience, both vocally and physically, and being yourself. I mean, there is, and to me, it's fascinating as a performer, and I hope it's equally fascinating in the audience. I have reason to believe that the audience is equally fascinated. It takes a few moments, and suddenly they're with me, and then we're playing with each other like a violin player with the the bow and the string.
There's so many things I want to get to. Let me try and attack some of them here. I mean, look, you've had many memorable film and television roles in your career. The one you've never been able to escape, of course, is Star Trek's Captain Kirk. It's interesting to me that there's a new position that you have on Captain Kirk after years of sort of chuckling about it. That a meeting with Patrick Stewart really, when you were doing The Captains, this documentary, really changed your own conception of this character.
It did. I mean, that was a true new thought. I had been directing a film I called The Captains. I had gone in search of the people who played the captains on Star Trek, the human beings. I wanted to see what we all had in common. It would have been impossible for me to do if I hadn't been lent a plane by this wonderful Canadian company called Bombardier. And I flew around various parts of the world to find the actors and interview them. And in the process of doing research on Patrick Stewart, I realized that Patrick Stewart, with all his gravitas, was seriously meant that his life, all his work, had led up to playing Captain on Star Trek, Captain Picard. And that when he spoke to the press, he was very proud of that fact. And I realized that somewhere in the many years between my playing the part of Captain Kirk and doing publicity for all these things, people say, well, it's Star Trek and beam me up, Scotty. And I'm saying, yeah, haha. And I'm laughing it off that I'd lost the knowledge, the intimacy of Star Trek's place in our culture. And in talking to Patrick, I suddenly remembered what it was I had contributed, what I had done. Further embraced, by the way, enhanced by directing another documentary called Fan Addicts, which will be out in 6 months or a year, in which I discovered a sort of the mythology of Star Trek and what my contribution was. And suddenly I remembered the pride I took, and I've regained the pride.
It sounds like you fell back in love with the guy.
Well, exactly. That's a very good way of putting it.
This one of the things you talk about in the book too is you out yourself. You come out of the closet for some of your fans who I would be surprised if they really didn't know this. But you say, I am Canadian. You make it very clear to anybody who didn't know. You also drop the revelation that you can't vote here.
Right.
Why can't you vote here?
I'm not a
resident.
I'm not a resident here, and I'm a resident in the States, but I have a Canadian passport.
You can't vote anywhere.
I haven't voted. I've never voted.
You've never voted?
I've never voted. When I was getting ready to vote, I moved to the States.
And how do you feel about never having voted?
I feel very badly about it, not being able to make my opinion felt in that minute way of voting, but I press everybody I know to vote because that's the only way the democracy will work.
You made your opinion felt in a very rousing way at the Vancouver Olympics, which you talk about as well, and the speech you gave, a love letter you call it to Canada, and a beautiful big dream. What did it mean to be that kind of ambassador for the country at those ceremonies?
Well, it was a wonderful honor. I was, when the group who put on the Olympics came down to Los Angeles to talk to me about being in the closing ceremonies, I leapt at the chance. It was a great honor, and I looked at it as that. And when I was when we concocted what I was going to say, I was very careful to place those things about Canada that I felt strongly about. I made that part of the speech. To take a moment to wave the flag, the Canadian flag. Canada is a great country. I don't think that many Canadians, well, I don't know how to characterize it, but I don't think all the Canadians realize what respect we have in the world, and how intelligent our government is, how intelligent the Canadian government is about the world itself. We find fault with it, as we should, and we criticize it as we should, and we try and improve it as we should. But in overall, looking at the overall picture of Canada and the world, we are in an enormously respected position. We should take great pride in being Canadians and what Canada stands for.
Do you almost feel like, I mean, in the last couple of years, between the Vancouver Olympic ceremonies, hosting the Genie Awards, the honorary doctorate at McGill, it's almost, do you almost feel more Canadian than you have in the last few decades?
No, I've been asked several times whether I wanted to become an American citizen, and I said no. I'm just happy to be a Canadian. I love coming back to Canada and seeing it. I mean, there's some policies here that I just don't understand at all, involving the environment. I mean, that to me, because Canada stood and stands for protection of the environment. The world is so limited that to defile our country with toxics again and again, where it can be avoided, is something that's an anathema to me. And that I wish, I don't understand the reason sometimes why the government is doing things, fish farming, salmon, and the oil sands, and various other things that I didn't think Canada stood for, in my opinion. But those things aside, Canada is a noble country.
I've only got like a minute and a half left with you here. You look strong. You are strong. You look great. You feel strong. You're doing all these projects. You do shed some insight, though. In the book, you say, on the morning that you turned 80 years old, you felt fearful. What did you feel? What did you feel fearful of?
Well, I'm everybody, when they think about it, is trepidatious about death. As you get older, you get more and more. I get more and more afraid of death. I don't have the kind of faith that says, well, I can't wait to go into the arms of God, who will welcome me through the pearly gates, and I'll see all departed loved ones, and then I'll wait for the loved ones that are here on earth until they come. I don't believe that. And so what is death? I mean, we just heard about Steve Jobs saying, oh, wow, oh, wow, oh, wow. What was he talking about? What did he see? What did he mean? Was it the release and no more pain? Or did he see something that now he can't tell us what it was he saw? I mean, the mystery of death is there with all of us. So at 80, I think, 80, my gosh, I'm looking death in the eye at any moment. I read it. Everybody I see is older than I. I have a friend of mine who was just told his cancer, he's going to die in a year. And he's a young man. He's 40-something, rather. And he said, I walked out of that hospital, and I looked around me, and I realized that everybody wasn't as sick as he was. And that's the first time he ran marathons.
It's a great pleasure to see you again.
My pleasure.
Thank you for
Look forward
this.
to the next time.